I was 22 years old, and I had just got sentenced to 27 years in prison. More time in prison than I had been alive And so that, in and of itself, was devastating, and I really initially felt like my life was over. I just couldn't see an end to this ever. And then, pulling into Jackson that day and just seeing razor wire so thick you can't even see through it, I thought for sure that this is the end. This place is just a madhouse.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to After Prison Show, and today I want to introduce you to a guy by the name of Ryan Perrish, a guy who's been locked up in the state of Michigan for almost 16 years now, who's been locked up since the age of 22 and is about to be 38 years old. A guy who's been locked up since 2002 for a second-degree murder charge. Now, I know that sounds absolutely heinous and horrible, but when I learned about this guy's story, his case, and I did the research on this, there was one thing that stuck out most to me with this guy's situation, and that is, I'm not even really sure this guy deserved a second-degree murder charge. Yes, he did take someone's life, but even the prosecution would go as far as to admit during this guy's trial that this was an accidental death. And when I hear that right there, I can't help but to think that this sounds like some sort of manslaughter or even involuntary manslaughter charge. And make no mistake about it, I am most certainly a firm believer that if you do the crime, you've got to do the time. But how much time is enough time, or even too much time? This guy has already been locked up for 16 years of a 27-year sentence. This guy still has 11 years left to serve. Now, I'm not trying to justify anything here, but I think when you learn the details surrounding this guy's case and a lot of really crazy other things as well, you might be of the mindset that I most certainly am, that this dude has definitely served his debt to society. And again, I cannot emphasize that there is a lot of things that surround this guy's case. For one, when they did the pre-sentence report, which is where they put together all of the information and the facts and all of the evidence in this guy's case, and also where they score an individual based on their crime, their age, and all sorts of other things that come into play that actually put together the sentencing guidelines if found guilty, it was proven that this score was calculated incorrectly. This guy's original sentencing guidelines would be something between like 15 and 18 years. However, he would end up being sentenced to a minimum of 27 years upwards to 50 plus years. How does that even make any sense at all? And to go even further, another major point to address here is that just a couple of years ago, I think it was back in like 2015, maybe a year or two later or earlier, there was a ruling that the sentencing guidelines in the state of Michigan were unconstitutional. And because of that, there was actually some sentencing reform that took place. So if you think about these three things right here, one, the prosecution would go on to acknowledge during the trial that what would take place that would lead to the loss of a life, which would actually get Ryan a second-degree murder charge and a 27-year sentence. The prosecution would actually acknowledge that this was an accident, then throw into the mix that his sentencing points calculation was done so incorrectly, and also that they've had sentencing reform take place in the state of Michigan because the way they had gone about sentencing people in the state of Michigan had been ruled unconstitutional. Those three things right there really sound like some solid grounds for appeal. However, this guy has exhausted all of his appeal efforts. And now the only hope that this guy has is a pardon from the governor, which when it comes to this, time is of the absolute essence because the governor is only going to be in office for another 5 months. And when you have a governor who's on his way out, you definitely have a way better chance if you can get your case somehow in front of this governor to actually get that pardon. And I mean, to be completely honest with you, this sounds like an absolute long shot, like an absolute shot in the dark. I was first made aware of Ryan Perrish's case and his situation by his girlfriend. She started messaging me on Twitter and she got my attention. And when I looked at the petition page that had been set up on Ryan's behalf, I'm going to be linking all of this information in this video. I became absolutely compelled to try to do anything in my power to help this guy's situation. But I do have to be a realist about this situation. What could After Prison Show really do? I told his girlfriend when me and her spoke on the phone for the very first time, I said, I don't want to get your hopes up or give you any sense of full security with this. I said the very best that I could even attempt to try to do is to gain exposure through the reach that we have with this channel, to get more people familiar with who Ryan is and his situation, which could actually be a good thing. Maybe we could help to get tons of signatures on this petition to help free Ryan. Or maybe the right person sees this, maybe some sort of a lawyer with some type of influence. I mean, I know that there is probably a long shot in itself, but who knows? You never know who we could potentially reach addressing and covering Ryan Perrish's story. I would end up first speaking with Ryan on the phone yesterday during a Twitch live stream, one of our Kicking the Bobo live streams. If you guys aren't a part of that, again, I highly encourage you to become a part of those things. Twitch.tv/AfterPrisonShow. But it was during yesterday's live stream where Ryan first called me and we first got a chance to talk with each other. And when I talked with this guy, I just became more compelled to try to help in any way that I could. This is a guy, again, who's been locked up for 16 years, who still has 11 years left to serve. A guy with a lot of loopholes in his actual case and what sounds like a lot of grounds to actually get his case back in front of a judge. Somehow this guy has maintained hope through a situation that most anyone would probably consider hopeless and would also probably lose all hope in. But this guy seems to be the most positive, driven, and focused person that I've ever had a chance to speak with. Through the 16 years that Ryan has been incarcerated thus far, this guy has done every positive possible thing that one could do while serving the type of time that he's been serving. This guy started out at a level 4 penitentiary where it was 23 hours a day locked down, 3 hours a day outside of your cell, and he spent over 3.5 years at this prison at 22 years old. How do you not lose hope in a situation like that? That's basically like spending almost 4 years in isolation, which would drive any sane person absolutely crazy. But yet somehow this guy maintained through that and also throughout all of the additional time that he served since the very beginning, since he first got locked up. And you know, with the fact that as I was speaking with this guy and I became even more compelled to try to help in any way that I could, I told Ryan not only would I attempt to try to get as much exposure and as much attention to his particular case as I possibly could, I also want to try to help get this guy a different, better lawyer. Because you see, he was able to hire a lawyer to file what is referred to as a commutation, which is basically another type of appeal, that last-ditch effort that gets sent to the governor's office with hopes of landing on the governor's desk and he actually sees and reads this thing. But this lawyer that they were able to hire has done nothing since filing this paperwork for him. And in fact, when this lawyer first filed this paperwork, he did so incorrectly. It was actually kicked back and then had to be corrected and then sent back in again. You know, since this paperwork's been filed, they haven't spoke with this lawyer. They said it took months after they paid this lawyer before he even began to work on Ryan's case. I mean, this is absolutely crazy to me. So again, not only do I want to try to bring as much awareness and exposure to Ryan's case, this whole Free Ryan movement, I also want to do everything in my power to try to help get Ryan a better lawyer. No guarantees that this will work, but at least give him some sort of a better chance of actually getting this commutation and this governor's pardon. You know, I told you with After Prison Show, this thing is much bigger than me, and it's my hope to be able to do as much positive work as I possibly can. We have created something amazing, something strong, and something sort of powerful. And as the captain of this After Prison Show ship, I'll be damned if I don't try to do everything in my power to stand for something bigger, more positive, and just overall really good. But it's with me mentioning all that I have thus far that I want to take this time to introduce all of you to Ryan Perrish, and maybe by me doing so, you might be compelled in some sort of way to really want to help just as much as I do.
This call is from a correction facility and is subject to monitoring and recording. Thank you for using GTL.
Hello?
Hey Ryan, how you doing this morning?
Hey, doing pretty fair. Yourself?
Oh, I'm doing all right, man. Hey, it's a real pleasure to get a chance to talk with you again. Thanks for making the time to call.
Hey, anytime. We've been having some trouble with the phones up here, cutting in and out, so if I go out for a minute, it's just the phone. It comes back on in a second.
Okay, yeah, I noticed that a little bit from yesterday's phone call, and
yeah.
I'm sure Jaylee told you that we did record the call yesterday. I am going to record the calls today as well. I want to get better.
Yeah,
I want to get better audio for this, and I'm going to try to put this video together today, as a matter of fact.
Oh, great. Man, thanks a lot, Joe, man, for everything.
I mean, look, it's the least that we can do, and I really hope that we're able to do some real positive stuff with this. I had a chance to speak with your girlfriend yesterday, telling her to start looking for appeal lawyers, trying to get on the phone with these folks, and really seeing if anybody, if we can find the right lawyer that we need in this situation.
Yeah, just been on top of it.
So Ryan, look, if you don't mind, I'm gonna go ahead and get right into this.
Okay.
The first thing that I want to ask you is, could you just tell us a little bit about who you are and also your case? Just give me a little bit of background on your story.
You know, growing up, life was difficult. You know, especially in the home when I was a kid. Dealt with a lot of violence and abuse in the home, sexual abuse. You know, by a neighbor. A lot of that carried over into my teenage years. When I hit 13, 14, I found drugs and alcohol and began experimenting with a lot of that. And that kind of, at first, seemed like it offered a little bit of relief, you know, from a lot of the things that I was dealing with, you know, depression and animosity and stuff like that. From really just affected every aspect of my life. And I continued on with my drug and alcohol, you know, use through my teenage years. And these took a, you know, as you can imagine, a heavy toll on myself and really on those around me too. And my life kind of went on like that for about 8 years, up until the night that I committed this crime, in 2002, where I, you know, that ultimately led me to prison, where I've been ever since. You know, I don't have any excuses for the things I've done. I've always accepted responsibility for my actions, but I've always maintained that it was an accident, and I never had any intentions of somebody getting hurt, you know, the night that I committed this crime. My only intention that night, you know, was to rob Mr. Sherrington for some drugs or some money to buy some more. And, you know, during the course of that struggle and everything, that's when the firearm accidentally discharged.
You were 22 years old when this all took place. You were heavily involved in addiction and alcoholism. Your intentions were to go over here and rob this guy for drugs, for money, to feed your addiction. And in the midst of all of that, the firearm discharged, you did have a gun, and then this guy was killed in the process of this. Now, I know that sounds absolutely horrible, but one thing that I want to key in...
Yeah, absolutely.
One thing I want to key in on real quick is that the prosecution in your case actually acknowledged that this was an accident.
Yeah, they did. Yep, it's right in the pre-sentence investigation that the gun accidentally discharged and it was an accident.
And, you know, when I hear accident in relation to somebody losing their life, the first thing that comes to my mind is some sort of manslaughter, some sort of involuntary manslaughter, possibly even. And just the fact that you ended up with a second-degree murder charge for this, it's just kind of crazy and hard for me to understand.
Yeah, that's always been my kind of argument against it. I've never claimed to be innocent. I've never claimed to not be responsible for my actions. You know, I feel terrible about the events that occurred that night. And like I said, I never intended for things to happen that way or for anyone to get hurt. I was at such a low and desperate moment in my life. And I was there trying to feed my addictions and just trying to survive, really. And unfortunately, you know, my actions led to the death of another human being.
And I'm sure you carry a lot of guilt and remorse for this. I can't even imagine what it would be like to have to carry that around with you.
Yeah, I absolutely do. Yeah, I've always felt horrible, you know, about the events of that night, and I feel horrible for the family of the victim and everything. And I wish I could take things back, but sadly, you know, in a situation like this, you can't. But, you know, I've worked very hard to ensure, though, that those mistakes that I've made are never repeated.
You know, you've been locked up since the age of 22 years old. You're now 37. Getting ready to be 38. Yep. You're getting ready to be 38. You've almost been locked up for 16 years, or possibly even have been locked up for 16 years. You know, can you tell me a little bit about what your time has been like?
Well, it hasn't always been easy, but you know, that's the nature of prison. Which I've accepted that. It's come with a lot of struggle, a lot of hardships and heartbreaks and loneliness to the depth that I never could imagine. But you know, I've accepted all that. You know, being as a consequence of the choices that I made, I knew that I had to bear my sufferings in silence. You know, and it was just part of the process. You know, it was part of the healing process. And sometimes, you know, not only for me, but also, you know, for the victim's family. You know, to give them some sense of closure and everything. And you know, so I've always accepted the struggles that come with incarceration and just bear the burdens that it imposes on us in here. You know, and because it is necessary. You know, and I was wrong, so. and I understand that there had to be a time of punishment. But since that time, despite all the chaos and the confusion of a place like this, I've always stayed focused. I've always stuck to my commitment to change and to educate myself and better myself, and I've never deterred from that course. In 16 years, I've always educated myself. I've always tried to help others, especially the youth, in here who are incarcerated daily. I've always tried to share my story, and my experiences and everything with them, in hopes of maybe sending them out better men and ensuring that they never make the same mistakes that I have and come back to this place. Because a lot of times, many of us who go on to victimize others were first victims ourselves, and as we grow, we just repeat this cycle of violence that we learn from such a young age. And I always try to work to try to help others, the younger guys coming in, to try to break that cycle and just try to give back in any way that I can to try to make up for the wrongs that I've done.
The first thing that I got to say, just listening to all of that, is for somebody in your situation, being locked up for 16 years, it would seem so easy to just give up and be hopeless. But you seem so full of hope, you seem so full of life, and so positive at the same time. You talk about how you've always maintained a focus to better yourself. Talk about the choices that you've made, and talk about the things that you've done since being locked up, the positive things that you've been doing.
Well, when I first came down, I started what came to be called, at the time I didn't know, but I started what came to be called the Ryan Project, and it was my own personal project that basically a journey of self-discovery is what it was, in order to help others. And Ryan being an acronym for Reaching Youth About Narcotics. And through this, it's kind of driven me to better myself and to understand my own addictions, my own problems, and so that I could, for one, first fix myself, because I can't be any good to anybody, if I'm still broken inside and just, still struggling with suicidal thoughts, depression, and trauma, and everything that comes with just a tough life that I've had to live. And since that time, I've learned to help others. And, like I said, I've been volunteering now for a couple years with the Pause with a Cause dog program, helping to train service dogs. I live with one right now. His name's Mickey. He's pretty young. He's 14 months old. He's a really smart dog, but he can be stubborn. But he's a great dog. Reminds me of someone I used to know. Right. And so I've been working with him, and this is this gives me the opportunity to give back to my community for the wrongs that I've done. If they're trained well, they'll eventually go to a client who has physical disabilities, and it can be a life-changing experience for those people, who are really limited in their abilities even to walk out of the house, So that was one of the better choices that I've made since I've been in here. I've always had a desire to give back to my community, but being in this situation that I am, it really limits me in those possibilities. So this was one avenue that I was able to do that. Beyond that, I've taken a number of substance abuse classes, not only to understand my own addictions and my own past problems with criminal behavior, but also that in hopes of one day teaching that to those experiences and having just a better understanding of the whole process of addiction and recovery. I've taken classes through Central Michigan University, which was offered by the prison. Was for conflict resolution, occupational therapy through Saginaw Valley State University. Those were really great programs that I was able to be a part of. I'm thankful that the facility allowed us, made those programs available free of charge.
And you actually got a degree through these programs as well, correct?
Through Blackstone Career Institute, I did, for paralegal studies.
For somebody who's been locked up for as long as you have been locked up, I can't emphasize this enough, just to be able to maintain the positive course that you've been on. It would be so easy to get involved in the negativity of what prison life is really like. Hey, you got a lot of time to do. Yeah. Let me just go ahead and start doing this and that. You've tried to avoid and divert from that course as much as possible.
Yeah, I absolutely have. When I first came in, it's really easy in a place like this to get into trouble and to continue in the behaviors that ultimately got us here, and even maybe to become worse in here. It's a really negative environment. There's a lot of negative situations that you can find yourself involved in, but I stayed focused. I found refuge in my books, in my studying, and into improving myself and bettering my life so that I could be a better person for my community and for my family. And I really owe that to the victim's family, really, in order to help as many people as I can and to ensure that I never again return back to that life that ultimately led me here, that caused so many people, so much hurt and loss in their life. It's really driven me every day to be the best that I can and for 22 years of my life prior to my incarceration, I had lived with so much hurt and so much sadness and everything and animosity from just, a lot of childhood trauma and just struggling ever since it seems like the day I was born. That all led me into here when I self-destructed, the night that I got incarcerated. And when I got in here and I looked back at my life and I just seen this path, just hurt and destruction that I had caused because of my actions, because I was out of control. I had no insight into my own problems, least of all how to fix them.
Right.
So, coming out of...
You have 1 minute remaining.
That desperation kind of showed me that nothing good comes from that. So no matter what situation I face, I have to stay positive. I have to stay hopeful. That's the only way that I'm going to be able to change and stay on this good road.
Ryan, are you able to make another phone call?
Yeah, I sure am. Yep.
Did you get the money that I put on the phone? I put money twice. I put it on your trust account and I also put it on the advanced pay. So there's like $30 on the trust and there's 15 on the advanced pay.
Oh, okay, thank you. I'm sure I did. I haven't checked my account this morning, but I'm sure it's there.
I was just able to do it this morning though because it took me forever to figure out how to get to where I needed to be at.
Yeah, they don't make it easy. It'll probably be on there later. Yeah, I really appreciate it. So you didn't have to do that, man. You've done more than enough already.
No, I mean, I want to help you as much as I possibly can. And again, I feel like that's, just something that we can do and it was no big deal. But yeah, definitely give me a call right back, Ryan, all right?
Yep, I sure will, Joe. Thank you.
All right, bye.
Thank you for using GTL. To accept this call, press 0. This call is from a correction facility and is subject to monitoring and recording. Thank you for using GTL.
Hello?
Hey, what's going on, Ryan?
Hey, Joe. Not much.
Ryan, I want you to talk to me about the beginning of your incarceration. Obviously, that had to be the worst time that you had to serve. You got the sentence that you got, and then you end up going to, I can imagine, a high-level prison. Can you talk to me about like what the very beginning of this time that you served was like?
Yeah, it was rough, definitely. I was 22 years old, and I had just got sentenced to 27 years in prison. More time in prison than I had been alive And so that, in and of itself, was devastating, and I really initially felt like my life was over. I just couldn't see an end to this ever. And then, pulling into Jackson that day and just seeing razor wire so thick you can't even see through it, I thought for sure that this is the end. This place is just a madhouse.
And what level were you at initially?
Level 4.
And what type of a prison was this? I mean, obviously this was a high-level prison, but was this a lockdown facility?
Yep, 21-hour lockdown a day, and we got 3 hours out. So for 21 hours, you stayed locked into a 7 by 10 foot, basically concrete box. I pretty much lived for 3.5 years like that within a 2-acre, fenced-off property. And so that alone came with a lot of struggles, especially for a young kid who had a temper, who didn't have a lot of social skills, was a high school dropout, and, had a learning disability. So I didn't know initially how to interact well with others in large settings like this. And also, as you can imagine, the level of just hurt and desperation and animosity and everything that you're reeling from coming into this place, just, coupled with the amount of time was just, it was difficult. It really was. I just, looking back, I'm thankful that I was able to not self-destruct. I was able to somehow remain positive enough, or hopeful enough, even if it was a false hope at the time. It was enough to get me out of bed, enough to keep me going. And it got me through it, thankfully. And now, sitting here 16 years later, I've been able to maintain a good prison record and done a lot of great and positive things with my life, and starting to seem like the burden's relieving itself a little bit, which is fortunate, because in the beginning it didn't seem to be any hope whatsoever.
And you brought up a point that I really want to address real quick, and that was the fact you were sentenced to 27 years. But your case is really interesting because of the fact of what your original guidelines, your sentencing guidelines were. Can you talk to me about that situation right there?
Original guidelines were 15 or 18 years on the minimum to 25 years as a maximum. The prosecution and the judge took it upon themselves to sentence me to the top end of my guidelines, which made my minimum, and then sentenced my maximum into the next guidelines above it, which was 50 years. My original guidelines were around 15 to 18, which would put me home.
Right.
I would either be home or I'd be, worst case scenario, two years from the door, which would, after all this, would be nothing. It wouldn't even be an issue. But they far exceeded my guidelines. In the pre-sentence investigation, there was they really advanced a lot of my points. They scored me. A lot of my scoring was scored wrong, which enhanced my guidelines. And we've tried to appeal on that numerous times, and just with absolutely no results whatsoever.
And what would be the reason why they would deny these appeals? Because that right there, if they're misscoring you, if they're not scoring you correctly, that right there sounds like an automatic grounds for appeal. What would be the reason they denied these?
I think the main reason is just because for the most time it's been me filing pro per just on myself, and being a prisoner, even though I have a diploma in paralegal studies and law, I'm still just a prisoner. I know it's hard for us to gain access to the court, or for our appeals to be taken serious. And so oftentimes they just, when they're filed without a lawyer, they just kind of get overlooked and rubber stamped and shot down. Once you're in here, you don't have a whole lot of rights left, unless you have people out there willing to speak for you and willing, to help you out. So I think that was the initial reason why a lot of our appeals failed. It's just I was stuck doing them on my own.
And since, what it seems like is the appeals process has been exhausted, you do have a lawyer now who has filed on your behalf a commutation, which basically has to be pardoned by the governor at this point to even get in front of the parole board. Is that correct?
Yep, that's correct. We're right now, we hired a lawyer, and he helped us file an application for commutation or pardon. And basically what we're doing is we're asking the governor for leniency for an early release, which he has the power to do under the Michigan Constitution. It's a lengthy process and it's very difficult. One of the main things that cause a commutation to be successful oftentimes is the amount of public support that you can garner behind it, because being that a commutation is a political process and not a judicial one. So it really comes down to the amount of support, the amount of people that we have calling the governor's office, and just bringing awareness to the situation in the case.
I want to address another situation real quick as well. I mentioned that you have a lawyer who filed this commutation on your behalf, but since filing this commutation, which I actually heard they filed incorrectly, you haven't been able to get in contact with this lawyer. This lawyer has done basically nothing since then, and it just really sounds like you just don't have the right lawyer in this situation, and you probably need a better lawyer.
Well, we went with one of the cheaper lawyers that we could find, because we didn't have a lot of finances, for a lawyer at this point. Well, it seemed like he was a great guy, and he seemed to do an okay job, but it really seemed like he put us on the back burner. It took 5 months, almost 6 months before he filed after we had paid him. He really pushed all the deadlines, way past the time limit. Didn't seem to care a whole lot about the case or actually getting it done or trying to help us out whatsoever. And so now we're just trying to scramble right now at last minute, trying to gain enough support and try to stand out and try to make the governor hear us.
The reason you mentioned last minute is because the governor whose attention you're trying to get, he's only in office for 5 more months. After this, there'll be a new governor, and your best chances of getting this commutation, getting this governor's pardon, is through this governor who's getting ready to leave office and not concerned about another term or something along those lines. So it's really this governor's attention that needs to be gotten.
Yep, that's correct.
I want to mention this as well, and this is probably going to be something tough to talk about, but if this doesn't happen and you're not able to get this commutation, this pardon, how much time do you have left to serve before you're even eligible for release?
11 years before I'm even considered.
You told me something about how they had just made some changes to the prison sentencing guidelines. They've done some prison sentencing reform because Michigan's sentencing was ruled to be unconstitutional. Or unconstitutional.
Yep, that's correct.
How long ago was it that this took place?
I believe it was in June of 2015. The Supreme Court ruled Michigan sentencing guidelines to be unconstitutional because they were based on judicial fact findings and a rigid scoring system that didn't allow any leeway, and it didn't allow the judge to sentence each case according to his own opinion.
Right. He had
on the circumstances. Because each case is unique. It didn't matter the circumstances of each case. They just sentenced you according to this one rigid sentencing guidelines based on whatever statute you had been charged with. So it left really no room for the judge to say, hey, I don't believe Mr. Perrish deserves this amount of time. I'm going to give him this amount. So it really locked him into a certain set of guidelines that he had to follow. And I believe if it wasn't for that, I would have had a far, shorter prison sentence than what I actually received.
And then go ahead and throw into the fact that your points, the way that they scored you, was done incorrectly as well. So, there's a lot of very strong points to be made in the defense of your case. You know, you've been locked up for 16 years now with an involuntary manslaughter charge or even a second-degree murder charge. You know, 16 years, you've been remorseful, you've done everything in your power to better yourself, you've done every single program in the prison, you speak multiple different languages, you mentor the youth, you're doing you're teaching drug classes, you're doing Pause with a Cause. There's just so much, the list goes on about the positivity in your situation that would be a positive in your defense as well. You know, Ryan, I want to ask you something else. If you were to get released, you know, what would be your game plan trying to get your life back together after so many years being gone from the world?
Well, as I mentioned the other day, I have great job opportunities and I have a great support system out there. My entire community and my family and friends and everybody's behind me. Once I'm released, I would like to continue my volunteer service with Pause with a Cause. Their headquarters in Wayland's actually about 20 minutes from the place where I'll be paroling to, and one of my other cousins, Michelle, used to volunteer there helping train the service dogs, so I would like to continue that. I really enjoyed working with the animals, and I've always, loved doing that growing up as a kid, on a farm. And, but my dream, ultimately, is I would like to get out there and work with at-risk youth, and I want to be able to share the story and the lessons that I've learned from my own personal addictions and the trauma that I dealt with for so many years from sexual abuse and violence. And I would like to work with a lot of these kids that are coming out of those similar backgrounds in hopes of possibly deterring them from making the same decisions that I've made and everything that comes with it.
You know, it does sound like you definitely have a game plan to succeed if given the opportunity to be released. Look, we're definitely running short on time here, Ryan. There's a couple of things that I want to address real quick before we get out of here. My hope with doing this video, introducing you to After Prison Show and potentially a far greater audience, is to, one, allow people to hear just how crazy your whole situation is, and also to possibly attempt to try to gain a bigger support system for the Free Ryan campaign and movement that has basically been established on your behalf. I would also like to attempt to try to help you get a better lawyer, and that's one thing that I want to be able to do in this situation. I've spoken with your girlfriend, and she's in the process of trying to find a better lawyer, and that's something that I feel very adamant about trying to help do on our, from our standpoint. I want to ask you though, real quick, is there a message, is there anything that you would like to just convey, express to anybody who might be seeing this and getting a chance to know you?
You have 1 minute remaining.
And getting a chance to know you for the first time, is there anything that you would like to say in closing with all of this?
Just that, first I'd like to apologize to my community and to the victim's family, most importantly. And I would like to thank everybody, who has stepped up and who has helped. It's been just a tremendous blessing to see everybody who was willing to help me and who has helped out for a complete stranger at that, for someone that many people don't even know, but who's willing to take a chance and help me. It's been a complete blessing, and I look forward to getting out and paying it back in any way that I can, by continuing to serve my community and helping others like myself and anything that I can do to make this world a better place to live in.
Ryan, look, I look forward to speaking with you again real soon. I'm going to talk with your girlfriend, line up some more calls with you. Brother, keep your head up, and we're going to do everything we can on our part.
Man, thank you, Joe. I really appreciate it, and I look forward to talking with you and working with you someday in the future, man.
Absolutely, Ryan. Hey, stay strong, and I look forward to talking with you again real soon.
Thank you for using GTL.